Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the Robert Patton Global Podcast. I am here with Dan Wootton, the host of the Outspoken YouTube channel, where he covers the latest news on the British royal family. And I'm very intrigued by the British royal family, as I'm sure most people are. And it's an honor to have you on the show. Thank you so much for joining me.
It's an honor to be here. Thank you so much.
Yeah. So I am curious we could just get started, I guess, like how you got to the point where you started covering the family.
Well, it's really interesting. So I'm New Zealand born, and New Zealand is a Commonwealth country, but I was always a British citizen. My parents were born in the United Kingdom. My grandparents fought in World War II. So I always felt this real connection to the royal family. Even New Zealand is a Commonwealth country, so the king now is the head of state and the late queen was. So I had a real affinity to the royals. I grew up with the royals. They were such a huge part of my world, I guess, from a distance, of course. And I think Princess Diana, too, was just one of those once in a century celebrities, right? So in all of the time that I've been alive, I haven't experienced another human being with that type of magnetism and just true star power. And I've interviewed pretty much most of the big celebrities in the celebrity world, you know, be it Madonna or Paul McCartney or Rihanna. But there's something about royalty, isn't there, which is just elevated. And I guess I would say the only other celebrity that we can probably think of in the last century that maybe comes close to Princess Diana's star power was JFK. And so the death of Princess Diana was a huge deal for me. I was 14 years old. I became absolutely fascinated with that world of royal reporting and how it all worked. I was the same age as Prince William, so I guess there was a sort of emotional comparable too about what was it like to walk behind your mum's coffin. How could I imagine that happening to me? So that really impacted me. And then I covered my first ever royal tour when the late Queen visited New Zealand in, gosh, it must have been, I think it was 2002. Then I moved to the UK in 2005. So I've been here for 20 years, working as a journalist, working my way up. And I was very, I guess, right from the start, I always knew that the royal family would be part of what I reported. So, you know, I reported from Charles and Camilla's wedding in 2005, Catherine and William's wedding in 2011, you know, all of those big moments. But I guess for me, the story that really exploded things were Meghan Markle's entrance into the royal family, because it was just such a unique story that sort of combined news and politics and show business and royalty. And I became, I guess, one of the most notorious chroniclers of her time in the royal family. And it resulted in me breaking the story of Megxit when they chose to leave the royal family in January 2020, and then obviously it all erupted. But I'm just a royalist, I'm a monarchist. It's interesting though, because obviously I don't believe that that means that the royal family shouldn't be criticized or that we shouldn't be honest with our reporting of them. And even this week on Outspoken, I've been pretty critical of some things that King Charles is doing at the moment, which is not necessarily easy, but it's always a fine line. But I think with the royal family, there's a real fascination, and it's one of those stories, and this is something that always works so well on YouTube as well. It's truly international. You know, the royal family, the British royal family is like the royal family for the world. We may not know that much about monarchies in Thailand or Sweden, you know, but we know about the British royal family.
Totally. Yeah. I was so excited to talk to you. I was telling like my daughter and my wife and my other friends that I'm interviewing this guy who covers the royal family, and I've been listening to some of your latest streams, and you've been talking a lot about Meghan Markle, and she gets a lot of hate. I was noticing from your channel, which it was quite fun. It's almost funny because it happens here. Like I wouldn't say she's a laughing stock, but maybe she is. A lot of the stuff that she puts out, it's just like you would think it would be this uh, super popular show on Netflix or a podcast, but I think it draws a lot of crickets from the fans. Not a lot of uh, popularity coming from
Yeah,
America or
because
yeah,
this was a woman. Look, the thing is, I think it's really important for me to say, like, I never came into covering Prince Harry and Meghan Markle with any particular agenda, right? Like, I was literally just there covering it as this fascinating story. Like, oh my God, an American actress from this sort of average drama. I hadn't actually watched Suits at the time, so I'd never even heard of Meghan Markle, right? So I didn't come in with any preconceived ideas about what this woman was. And actually, I was really supportive of the marriage, and I thought this is going to be a good thing for Prince Harry. And I'd obviously covered like his previous relationships and everything. So I didn't have any preconceived notion. But I think where the disappointment comes from is that this was a woman who had so many opportunities, right? So many incredible opportunities. She claimed that she wanted to change the world. And actually, when you're in the British royal family, you have the opportunity to do that. But what she actually then tried to do was tear down the British royal family based on lies and based on false claims of racism. And
yeah,
so I think that's why there's been that real shift.
yeah. I mean, to pull Harry like away from the family, what my interpretation of what happened is,
Yes.
that's like not cool, right? Because
No.
he's a major part, not the heir, but he could be if something were to happen to William, and to like take that away from him in a way, and like distance him from his grandmother. And I don't know their relationship with like King Charles and Harry, if they're do they do you know if they keep in contact or
So not now, no.
yeah,
And I don't blame Charles, but
yeah,
Charles is a lot softer on this whole thing than William, right? So William is very much like, nope, I am done. I am done. Like there were a few red lines. It was like, don't come for my wife,
yeah,
don't attack Catherine. And then he literally, in spare, like included all of these horrible claims that like Catherine, the Princess of Wales, was a bitch and everything. And it's like, she's not. She's really not. She's a really sweet, lovely woman. So I think William is done. It's different for Charles, isn't it? Because it's your son. And so you're always going to have that feeling of, oh God, we want to try and find a way to work this out. But I think that's another reason why this story resonates with people, because I don't know about you, Robert, but obviously lots of people, I mean, I'm so close to my family, so I struggle to ever imagine a day where I would ever turn on my family on the way that Harry has turned on his. I mean, I actually could sit here and say it would never happen. My
right,
family are my everything. It would never happen. But some people have very complicated family relationships. And of course, that plays into this whole thing, because what Meghan Markle did was come in and isolate Harry from his family and isolate him from his old friends. Now, that's something that a lot of people have experience of as well, right? Like someone falls in love with a woman and she doesn't want the guy to have contact with all of the people who were a connection to his old life or his Playboy life. So these are sort of universal themes that I think people can look at and understand. But certainly in the case of this story, I mean, I've like become friends, really good friends with Samantha Markle, who's Meghan Markle's sister, who lives in Florida and is a wonderful woman. She's wheelchair bound, which makes her quite vulnerable, but she's a really, really lovely human being. I know Thomas Markle, Meghan's father, who she decided to cast out in a really horrible manner, because he'd set up some paparazzi pictures. It's like, who cares? Who cares? Honestly, like, the idea that setting up some paparazzi pictures would ever stop me having a relationship with my own father, that's nuts. So this is unfortunately like a really manipulative woman. And I think when she sort of crossed the line, I don't know if you remember it, but it was when she went on Oprah Winfrey and she made those claims that there was like a racist operating within the royal family because they'd asked about the color of baby Archie's skin and everything. And people just don't like that. People don't like that type of, you're trying to make false accusations. And then it was almost like she was trying to say the whole of Britain was racist. And honestly, Robert, like I was covering that wedding in 2016. 2016, yeah. No, 2018, sorry, 2018. I was at Windsor, I was appearing with Megyn Kelly she was on the Today Show at that time on NBC. And it's like, honestly, the whole country stopped to celebrate. Like no one gave a damn that she happened to be a mixed race woman who had like a white father and a black mother. No one cared. Everyone was behind this union. So I think that was a real problem, right? As soon as you go and you blame something on racism and you try and make out that a whole country is racist, you're really crossing a line.
Yeah, I mean, and she's a beautiful woman, and she is, like Barack Obama was half black and half white, and we elected, well, it's different because this is America, but I know Britain, from what I can see, is quite just accepting of other races into the country, and and
it was honestly no big deal. Honestly, no one cared. Like they kept making her race an issue. It just wasn't even an issue.
Right. I mean, this is 2025. It's like not a big deal, and it's celebrated and totally accepted. And I think for her to make that claim does kind of draw a wedge between, I mean, especially if you're claiming it was like the Queen is racist, that's not gonna go over very well.
No, of course not. And I mean, actually, when you really dug down, the people who she was trying to claim were racist were King Charles and Catherine, the Princess of Wales. And that's particularly ridiculous. And it was because they had apparently asked Harry about the skin tone of baby Archie. Now, honestly, that is so normal. Like I've spoken to, my sister in New Zealand, her baby daddy is a Samoan guy, right? So a Pacific Islander. And apparently they had all of those conversations. It's just really an interesting thing, isn't it? Like if you've got two parents who have very different gene pools, it's just like how you would say, oh, I wonder if the baby is going to have ginger hair. Like it's not in any way a racist comment.
Yeah, just curiosity, right?
Just interest. And it was blown up. It was used to try and paint in America in particular, because remember, that's where Meghan wanted to do the damage. Like she had given up on the United Kingdom. What she wanted to do was damage the royal family in America, and not just in America, but also around the Commonwealth and in like the Caribbean countries and everything. And I think it's failed now, but for a while it did quite a bit of damage.
Yeah. I mean, just from like me putting myself in her position, I would have thought you would want to embrace being a princess in the royal family. I think, how cool would that be? Instead, she does the opposite and distances herself. And I don't feel like it's doing her any favors from just, she's a famous person, but as in that position, you would want to be liked and appreciated.
And actually try and change stuff, right?
Yeah.
Like she came in saying, oh, I want to change the world. But now all she's doing is flogging crappy jam and crappy wine, which she has no experience in making, to try and make money. It's like, God, you had an opportunity that people could only ever dream of. Like if you look back to Princess Diana, for example, who was obviously the person that I put on that pedestal when she was in the royal family. Now, Princess Diana, can you believe it? She was 36 when she died. Wow. 36 years old.
So young.
Meghan entered the royal family when she was older than Diana when she died. But Diana changed the world on particular issues. So I can literally sit here and immediately say she changed the world on HIV/AIDS, because before her, everyone thought that you couldn't touch someone who was infected with that disease. So she raised huge awareness on that issue. Bulimia, the eating disorder was very much not understood until Princess Diana went public about her battles with bulimia. Homelessness and the plight of homelessness across the United Kingdom in particular, and landmines. Do you remember she walked across that field in Angola to raise the whole issue of landmines being a huge issue? Now, that's four big issues that I can say Diana changed the world. Like Meghan had that opportunity. That is the power you have as a princess, because you're not like a celebrity that's having to go out and earn money and appear in a movie and endorse a shampoo or whatever it happens to be, right? We know what celebrities do. They don't have the time to just focus on those types of pursuits, and they don't have the profile to do it. Meghan had that opportunity, and instead she's chosen this very weird sort of life as a celebrity influencer. It's a weird choice for me.
Yeah. And I was listening to a recent podcast, kind of unrelated, but it has to do with people in high profiles with a lot of money, and how you would think that they live this just like happy-go-lucky life, no problems, no issues, but it turns out that they're struggling with maybe like depression or self-harm and alcoholism, for instance, or whatever. And one, I was listening to one of your recent podcasts, and there was this quote where she said, like trying to find moments of happiness where you can. And I think she was cheersing one of her friends or something. And it's like, but you live in the lap of luxury. I think they're pretty wealthy and, have everything that, she has Harry and, what's their son's name?
Little Archie, there's Prince Archie and Princess Lilibet.
Okay. Well, I mean, and she's not happy, but life is hard. Buddha says that life is suffering, and I could identify with that sometimes. It's not all that it's cracked up to be from the outside looking in. It's difficult, but
yeah, like money and fame.
Yeah.
Trust me, I've interviewed and been around celebrities for, decades. And money and fame is certainly not a ticket to happiness. Everyone thinks it's going to be, and then it's utterly not, right? Celebrities on the whole are the most miserable, unhappy, and unfulfilled people in the world. But there is a big but here. When it comes to Meghan and Harry, they left the United Kingdom because they claimed that they wanted their privacy and they wanted to live a different life. So go and do it. Do you know what I mean? They've had more money that most of us could ever dream about, right? Because Princess Diana left Harry a big inheritance, and he received a whole load more money recently from the Queen Mother. That was the mother of Queen Elizabeth II, who was previously Queen. He didn't get that money until he turned 40. Like, if they just wanted to go and live a quiet life, right, they had enough money to live comfortably for the rest of their days and not have to do any of this. They have chosen to put themselves right back into the public spotlight. And you see a lot of celebrities who just say, no, I've had enough. And they just bow out. And I really respect it. I really respect it when a celebrity does that. I think like quite a recent example of that is Cameron Diaz, for example. She doesn't really do the movies or anything anymore. I know there's always talk of a comeback, but she just wanted to go and live a quieter life. She's got all her money, and I respect that. It is possible to sort of bow out of the public eye, but that's not what Harry and Meghan have chosen to do. It's like they want to have their cake and eat it too. And it's like, no, there are consequences that come from making the decisions that you make.
Yeah. I mean, but like all we really see in the public eye from my perspective is Meghan. So like what is Harry doing?
Well, not much really. That's the odd thing. So she has basically said, look, I'm going to be the money maker now, because they got these huge deals. So it was an interesting time actually in the whole media, because there's this media revolution going on. Obviously, like I've moved into the independent space and I absolutely love it. I used to be in the mainstream media, and you've seen it with lots of people in America, obviously, which is like leading the charge on this. Joe Rogan and Megyn Kelly and Tucker Carlson and Dan Bongino, and I'm very inspired by that.
Me too.
But when Harry and Meghan moved to America, it was this era of like companies throwing massive, massive money at celebrities to sign them on sort of stupid, crazy deals where they didn't really have to deliver much. So it happened with the Obamas, with Netflix. It happened with, do you remember Will and Jada Smith? And this didn't work for Harry and Meghan because they had no experience of actually delivering any content. So they basically received this massive deal and got this huge amount of money. And then Spotify and Bill Simmons, who's like the head of podcasts at Spotify, but he has his own really successful podcast, he ended up coming out and saying that they were effing grifters because like they just didn't really do any work. Like Harry was given all of these opportunities like, oh, do you want to do a podcast with this guy? Do you want to make a podcast with this comedian? They spent like $2 million building them a big podcast studio in their mansion in Montecito. But he just didn't really know how to work. He didn't come up with any podcasts. Meghan did, but they've all been flops. And so it's a really interesting thing. It's like some people are hustlers, some people know how to work. Harry was someone who very much liked the royal life, which was you turn up an event, you speak to people, you shake their hands, and you're just seen, you're just seen. And that's enough as a royal. But like Netflix and Spotify, I'm sorry, if you're being paid $100 million, they are going to demand your piece of flesh. And if you have not come up with a hit in all of that time, then it's over. And so for the moment, Harry is back focusing on sort of like his faux royal duties. So sort of popping out, doing the odd bit of charity work and also doing public speaking. But essentially, all of the money making has been left to Meghan Markle. But what's really interesting to me from like a sort of macro perspective, looking at the media, is that very few people are going to get these sorts of huge deals anymore where Netflix just like signs a blank check for $100 million. That's not going to happen. Like if you're Shonda Rhimes or Ryan Murphy, behind big hit TV shows, then you'll get that type of deal. But if you're just a celebrity, it's like prove yourself. But Harry and Meghan were very lucky. They moved at that time when like Netflix was competing with Amazon, was competing with Apple, was competing with Peacock. Do you know what, like it was just money was being thrown around with like gay abandon.
Yeah, like development deals, I think they
Yes.
called them, and they just didn't develop anything. And I mean, because you think sometimes people might think he's just like an empty vessel of, he's just like, there's no creativity. I think I heard you saying, or maybe it was one of your guests, or maybe I heard it somewhere else. But because I think of myself as somewhat creative. I created this underwear company, Sheath.com, check it out. But I also had, many other,
by the way.
Thank you very much. And we're very honored to be
right now. I won't show you though, because that would be a very horrible side for everybody.
Yeah, that would be that's too much. What do you prefer, boxers or briefs?
No, definitely briefs. Definitely briefs for me.
We, but I can't imagine what's going on in his head. I mean, like, is he stressed out? Is he happy?
He's not happy. That's the thing. So like all of this whole thing was about like they were on this freedom flight. They described it as the freedom flight. Tyler Perry, that very rich Hollywood dude.
Yeah.
Basically paid for them. He'd never met them, but he saw their story and he bought into this idea that they were like these poor people being treated terribly by the royal family. So he paid for his private jet to go and pick them up from Canada to California. Just before the borders locked down, he let them stay at their house, and they described it as the freedom flight. And this was all about finding freedom. That's what they apparently wanted to do. But they've got their freedom now, and Harry is just as miserable as he's ever been. And he's picking all of these battles, like he's involved in loads of legal actions still in the United Kingdom. There's like a legal case against the British government. There's a legal case against newspapers. And it's really sad, actually. It's really sad because I think there's always that thing, isn't there, that you can, and again, this is, I think, a real lesson for life, that you can run away from your problems. If I move country, all of those issues that I had are going to go away. It's that typical thing of the grass is always greener. And I think Harry ran away from his problems, but he's still haunted by his issues. And unfortunately, the distance, I think, for him has made them actually worse, because he's just so cut up about everything that happened, and he's very bitter and twisted about everything that happened, and he hasn't actually been able to move on, which is surely what you would do, right? If you've got these 2 kids and a wife that you apparently love, and you're in this amazing mansion in Montecito. You know, they've got 16 bathrooms. 16 bathrooms. It's like, come on. This is a life that most people could only dream of. And yet you're so miserable and you're moaning all the time. And it's like, come on. Like, he's moaning about the First Amendment, or he's moaning about social media, or he's moaning about media coverage of him and his wife. Like, it's just constant moans. And I don't think people like that. I think at the end of the day, look, there are certain things that are hard about being a celebrity or a member of the royal family, of course. But for most ordinary people who have to get up first thing in the morning, go and work for potentially 8 to 12 hours a day just to put food on the table for their family, the idea that they're going to feel some great empathy for Prince Harry or Meghan Markle while they're, living in a 16-bathroom mansion in Montecito, I think it's for the birds. So I think he's really misjudged the public mood. Royals aren't meant to moan. That's not what the royal family is there for. The royal family is meant to be there as sort of a symbol of unity and to serve the people and to help the people through difficult times. The late Queen Elizabeth II, who I thought was the greatest monarch ever, who was just an incredible leader. Could you ever imagine her moaning about things? It's just not what the royal family is meant to be about.
My mother loves Queen Elizabeth II. And did you find that Netflix show that they made about her to be accurate? Or
no, it definitely wasn't accurate. The Crown. It's an interesting one, though, because the British royal family have real issues with the Crown.
Okay.
Because especially Charles, Charles was so unhappy about it, because most Americans in particular, and not just Americans, but they really care about the American market. But I'd say anyone who isn't British, or maybe from the major Commonwealth countries like Australia, New Zealand, or Canada, young people tend to believe what happened in The Crown. So they view The Crown as like a documentary series rather than a drama. And so The Crown obviously painted King Charles as like this terrible adulterer who treated his wife, Princess Diana, awfully with brutality. So they were really worried about it. And I think there's a big relief amongst the royal family that The Crown has finished now, because Charles has actually just signed a deal with Netflix to make a documentary with him and Idris Elba. And I think it's like, thank goodness The Crown is no longer going on. Because, yeah, he was really sensitive about it. But I loved The Crown from an entertainment perspective. But I think the problem is that people treated it as if it was real. And so, when they did the whole Diana death thing, it was all just so unrealistic, and she came back as a ghost, and I'm just like, oh, okay, this is ludicrous now.
Whoa.
This is so ludicrous.
Yeah, I
loved the earlier series.
Yeah, I didn't watch the whole series, but I remember she was in probably Africa or something, and he came to visit her, but they spent a lot of time apart, and something about probably Camilla, and
yes,
they're not together anymore. Is that accurate? Or
no, they are, and so they've just been today at the state banquet in the United Kingdom. So no, Camilla was the love of his life,
right?
And in reality, and this is one of the things that the Crown sort of lays the door at the blame of the late Queen Elizabeth II, but probably Charles and Camilla should have just been able to marry to begin with.
Yeah.
But she was married to someone else.
Oh, right. Yeah.
And so there was this thing that, the Queen had to be a virgin, or the future Queen had to be a virgin, and certainly couldn't be a divorcee. But it's funny because in just 4 decades, obviously Meghan Markle, certainly not a virgin, and also a divorcee. So the royal family has modernized, and probably it would have been a lot simpler for everyone if Charles had married Camilla to begin with, but then we wouldn't have Princess Diana, which means we wouldn't have Prince William. And so actually, things happen for a reason, don't they? She was an incredible force of nature.
Yes. Yeah, she's still referenced to this day. So she obviously made a huge mark on the world.
Yeah.
And so I really appreciate you giving us all this information because it's quite, again, fascinating. And so Prince William and Princess Catherine, can you give us an update on how they're doing? And
Yeah, I mean, they're doing much better. They're doing much better. It's so interesting, isn't it? Because, I mean, as I say, I'm pretty much the identical age of William. And that's a huge thing to be in your early 40s and all of a sudden your wife is facing death.
yeah,
And that really changes things. It
Yeah.
really, really changes things. So, I mean, they're doing incredibly well, but it's been such a difficult year. And I think certainly it brought the whole question of mortality into light. And that's when people start thinking about, well, what really matters? And I'm sure you've thought about that a lot, being someone who served, as a young person, you must think
Oh, yeah.
about death. And I guess that came into full throttled vision for William, because it wasn't just that his wife had cancer, but literally at the same time, his father, King Charles, received his cancer diagnosis. And of course, there's the weird thing with the royal family that if your dad dies, then you automatically become king, you see, which impacts your whole life. So William was having to grapple with these two really big things at one time, which was, oh my gosh, I'm facing potentially the loss of the woman who I love and who I've expected to be with me by my side and to be my queen. And, so that's going to throw you into complete turmoil. What am I going to tell the kids? How are we going to deal with this? And thank God she's in remission now, but it was really a terrible period. But at the same time, it was like, oh, and I'm going to lose my dad at probably a lot sooner than I thought, because Charles's cancer is manageable but incurable. So it's possible. I mean, it is possible now. There are huge advances with medical technology, especially when it comes to cancer. And of course, everyone hopes that he lives a very long life, but he's still undergoing cancer treatment on a weekly basis. So all of a sudden, I think for William, it was like, oh gosh, and I might become king much sooner than I thought. So I guess that puts a lot of things into perspective. Certainly it put the whole issues with Harry and Meghan into some perspective. And it's not to say that it means nothing to him, but just that it's maybe not as important as it once was. But yeah, it was just a huge, crazy year for them. Very, very rare that you get these two senior members at the Royal. I mean, they were literally, Catherine and Charles were literally undergoing cancer treatment at the same time, sometimes, I believe, at the same hospital. I mean, and they would just, see each other and comfort each other. It's quite an extraordinary thing to happen. But obviously very difficult for William, piled a lot of pressure on him, and he is now, of course, heir to the throne. If something happens to his father overnight, he would become king.
Wow. I just got weird feeling. I think we all look, because America was a former colony of England, and just it's in our blood. I am Irish, Scottish, and English, and then a bunch of other things. But my family's from there, and a lot of us are, and so we have a connection. And so, what kind of cancer does King Charles have? If
Well,
you know,
he hasn't revealed the particular type of cancer.
Okay.
And he hasn't even said that it is incurable, but that is my understanding. And certainly Lady Colin Campbell, who's one of the regulars on my show, has also said that.
Yeah.
But, it's interesting with royals. You never quite get the truth about their health either. So the late Queen and Prince Philip, her late husband, they'd had loads of cancer battles over the years. And the royal approach is to sort of try and not ever make their health the story.
Yeah, because they want to present a strong, just be portrayed as strong and
It's like keep calm and carry on. It's that sort of
Yeah.
British stiff upper lip approach. But I think that's changed a little bit. And Catherine has spoken a lot now for her, quite personally, about the cancer treatment and how she's not back to normal and how it has changed her priorities and everything. And I think it's definitely. I mean, look, the public now, I think, love Catherine more than ever, actually, because it's that weird thing, isn't it, of like, oh my gosh, we actually realize we might lose you, and so you're ours now. It's a very very strange thing.
Yeah. It puts things in perspective, like you say, and you appreciate them more under these when you've with the potential loss of someone. It's like, whoa, I wasn't appreciating you as much as I should have, or something. Interesting. You were saying earlier, so we'll like get off that topic, but you were critical of King Charles, and I live in America and we have President Trump, and love him or hate him. I liked him. I always thought he was funny, and I don't hate him. Some people really hate him, but I'm not a huge fan these days. And but like so, but what did King Charles do that maybe uh, resulted in some criticism?
Well, it's an interesting one because, like, the king is not meant to be political, right? And
Yeah.
so that's the great thing about the British royal family. And, you can talk about divisive politicians, and obviously we have them in all countries. And that's maybe the whole benefit of the British system, our kingdom, is that, yes, we have our prime minister and we can hate on them or love them or whatever, but they are meant to operate in a political space, and then the monarchy is not. They're meant to keep out of politics, and it's such a fundamental sort of tenet of the system actually working and thriving, because if the monarchy gets political, then why on earth would we all want it to continue? And at the moment, like, the monarchy has approval ratings that a politician could probably only dream of. But Prince Charles, as he was like really political, right? So he has his issues, his big issues. He's very big on the environment. So he's a bit of, he's quite extreme on that front, I would argue, certainly compared to where my politics are at. And he's quite woke in a lot of ways. And so for me, he has started to, because we have a left-wing Labour government now, and he has started to wade just a little bit into politics in a way that his mother wouldn't have. And I think it's really, really dangerous. And so for the 20th anniversary of the 7/7 terror attacks, I don't know if you remember that, but it was like Britain's version of 9/11. So there were Islamist terror attacks on the tubes in London, which is like our subway system, and a double-decker bus was blown up. And it was 2005, July 2005. And for me, it was a really personal one because I was on the tube that day in London, going into the area that was about to be bombed. We really felt it. You really, I imagine it must be the same thing for anyone who was in the vicinity of the World Trade Centers on September 11th, 2001. That proximity to a big event like that really changes your life. And the scale of the destruction wasn't as big, but it was the first time here in the United Kingdom that there had ever been a suicide bomb, like a jihadi suicide bomb. Obviously, there'd been the IRA attacks, but they were not suicide bombers. So it was the first suicide bomb, and 52 people died, and over 700 people were like injured. And it was just the most horrible story. Anyway, it was the 20th anniversary of that this week. And Charles released a statement which was very much attacking of the people who he would claim was people who were questioning the Islamist motivation of those suicide bombers as people who were trying to divide the country. That's what he was saying. They were his words. That's a real issue for me, because I think if we're not honest about what actually caused those terror attacks, because we're still at threat here, there's
Yeah.
been multiple very serious Islamist terror attacks in the past 20 years. The most serious being the Manchester Arena bombing when Ariana Grande was performing, and that was a suicide bomb. It was an Islamic attack, and beautiful young girls of like 9 years old were blown to smithereens. It's
Wow.
like, we have to talk about this. We
Yeah.
have to talk about why this ideology is leading to these terror attacks. And by talking about it, which I do on my show,
Okay,
I
good.
don't believe that's me being divisive at all. It's me being honest and wanting to really acknowledge what's happening. So I was critical of Charles. I was very, very upset with his statement. It was interesting, actually. So I replied to his post on X. And have you heard of that thing where you can ratio someone? So basically the main post gets a certain number of likes, but one of the replies gets like loads and loads more likes, which basically means like you've ratioed whoever posted the initial, well, it's a tweet, isn't it? Where we don't call it a tweet now because it's on Twitter, an X post. And I ratioed the king. And I didn't mean to do that. I was just replying from my heart and soul. And I did say, Your Majesty, with respect, like, I just disagree with this statement.
Position. Yeah.
Yeah. And so you just wouldn't get that with the Queen. You just would not get that with the Queen. She just knew that it was so important. When I say the Queen, because this is weird too, because actually the Queen is now Camilla, right? She is actually the Queen of England now. So when I say the Queen, I mean the late Queen, Queen Elizabeth II. You just wouldn't have got that. So I find it difficult. Like, I am a royalist, I am a monarchist. So in some ways it feels quite unnatural attacking the king. It's not something I like to do. However, I think it's really important that independent journalists keep everyone honest, keep
Absolutely
honest. And
Yeah.
so I'm not prepared to just not say anything.
So true. Yeah, it seems like in America there is no real independent journalism. There are a few, but it seems to a great degree a lot of the news broadcasting stations get their talking points from somewhere and they all repeat them, and we're like, bro, you keep lying to us and we know you're lying and you've been caught so many times. We don't believe you anymore.
Totally.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. I'm not party political. I refuse to be. I obviously I have my strong political ideology, but I'm very, very clear with my audience. Like, I'm not trying to be elected. I don't want to be a politician. I just want to hold the people in power accountable. And sometimes that does mean the king. As much as I might love the monarchy, I think it's important that if the king does something wrong, he can be criticized for it too. I think we live in a democracy, and that is an important part of the democracy, and having a free press and having freedom of speech.
Yeah, totally. And that's what's so great about YouTube is you have all these independent YouTubers, and I don't know.
Love it. I love it now. It's like the whole world is changing, right?
Yeah, I love it too. Because we're just getting away from the established media because they've been infiltrated or something. Like, I honestly think in America they've been infiltrated by the CIA, and the CIA is like operating news stations like Fox and CNN.
Certainly here they work with the deep state. I mean, there's no doubt about that. I mean, during COVID, like in the United Kingdom, the government was paying, the newspapers and the broadcasters millions and millions of dollars to sort of keep them afloat. So it's like the symbiotic relationship, and they always support each other. And that's why I love, for me now, as I say, like, my diet is made up of so many independent journalists, be it Megyn Kelly or Tucker Carlson or Bill O'Reilly or Dan Bongino, although he's now at the FBI. But you know what I mean? There's a whole load of independent journalists out of America who I respect so much. And what I'm trying to do is bring that out of the United Kingdom too, but still to an international audience, because that's what's so amazing about YouTube, there's so much interest still in what's happening in the United Kingdom. Obviously, the royal family is a big part of that interest, but also some of what's going on here politically, because obviously Americans look at it and think, oh my God, we don't want to get to that point. Look at what's happening in Europe. We don't want to get there.
With like immigration or something.
Yes.
Yeah.
Immigration, Islam.
Yeah.
It's bad here. Demography, Sharia law, all of that. We are a living warning to the United States about why I think Trump's focus on protecting the borders, for example, is so important.
Yeah. I mean, Trump is like, one of my main issues with him had to do with China, and that's my anyways. And the recent Iran thing was kind of like, obviously we didn't love that, but it seems to be over. And so maybe he knows what he's doing. He's playing 40 chess, and we're all just like watching. And maybe he does seem to get things done through his, tactics of the art of the deal or whatever. Yeah. And so I obviously I want him to do well, as I wanted Biden to do. I haven't voted in many years just because I think it's kind of all a joke. I don't really necessarily believe that our vote really counts, but maybe it does. And maybe I shouldn't be so cynical, but I'm hesitant to bring this guy up, but he's another British YouTuber. His name is Paul Joseph Watson.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I
don't know him personally, but I know of him.
Yeah, I watch his stuff, and he paints a picture of the United Kingdom that I think the press wouldn't want you to see. 100%. And I watch his stuff, and it's quite fascinating about, I guess, I don't know if you would call it an infiltration or whatever, but
yeah, I think he's doing great work, actually. I really do. I think he's one of the strongest independent voices that we have here, definitely, because, and this is why, like, what I was talking about with the terror attack anniversary is so important. It's like, if we can't even verbalize what the problem is, so the mainstream media, like, they would not even talk about the fact that this was an Islamic terrorist attack. It's like, that is a fact. Do you know what I mean? That is an absolute fact. Like, so basically there were the four suicide bombers were all born in the United Kingdom, but they were of Pakistani origin. 3 of them were, and they were radicalized here on British soil. And they hated us so much that as they went to blow up these tube carriages and buses, they were high-fiving each other and hugging and laughing. Like, we have to talk about that. We have to talk about that. We can't be afraid to. But what has happened here over the past 20 years is there's basically been a cloak of silence. And any time there's one of these terrible attacks, so, Manchester Arena bombing, Southport stabbing, which was a big one for me on Outspoken because I just started broadcasting, and these 3 beautiful young girls were stabbed to death by a terrorist, an Islamic terrorist, at a Taylor Swift dance concert. And it just was one of those crimes. Sometimes a crime can really touch the soul of a country, and it was one of those crimes. But we're always told by our leaders, oh, don't look back in anger. Diversity is our strength. Like, it's very important that we don't let these moments divide us. And of course, those platitudes might sound nice, but it's not the reality when we leave our house and are worried about going on a tube carriage being blown up, or you're worried about sending your daughter to a Taylor Swift dance class because an Islamic who has been radicalized by Al-Qaeda ideology might come and try to stab her to death. Do you see what I mean? So we all have our issues. It's like a lot of the rest of the world looks at America when it comes to school shootings, for example, and thinks, okay, why are school shootings so bad in America? So I think we can all learn from each other. Of course we can. But one of the issues, and why I think Paul Joseph Watson is so great with what he does and what I'm trying to do too, is we will actually have these conversations, which the mainstream media, they just will not have. They will just avoid the elephant in the room, no matter how big the elephant is.
Yeah. The school shooting thing is just like, I think there's a mental health issue in America, and it's being remedied, medicated with prescription drugs, and I don't think they're helping. And I think that, like it's turning some people kind of like psychotic, and there's,
Yeah,
who
there's a
knows?
huge big pharma issue, isn't there?
Yeah.
Absolutely, there is. But I think we've got that here too. And by the way, I'm certainly not one of these Brits who advocates for like taking guns off Americans. Like when I was in Florida, I felt so much safer than I do in London. And that to me is so interesting, right? Like I feel much, much safer in a country where you do have the right to bear arms. So I just think there's lots of things we can learn from each other, but I honestly am very jealous actually I mean, America's not perfect. No country is perfect. Of course it's not. And there has been a big invasion of the American southern border, and there's lots of issues. Of course there are. But you don't have a lot of the threats that we're facing here in Europe.
Man, this is so crazy. This is so cool to talk to you. And I hesitate. I like have to censor myself almost because I have a company and I don't want to like offend
I
people.
know,
But
bless you.
it's
I
it's
don't do
like
that.
good. And I know Paul Joseph Watson doesn't either. Which I'm just like, man, this guy is saying the real story, and but then people are like, he's a racist or whatever, and I'm
Yeah.
just like, I don't know, man. It just,
Totally.
I
I mean,
guess,
that word is just thrown around now. It's insane. I mean, people will constantly try and say people who are very moderate, are racist or on the far right. But I don't really think that means anything
not
anymore
anymore.
because
Yeah,
it's like, I mean, certainly someone like me. I mean, remember I spent 20 years working in the mainstream media here, right? So I was on all of the big newspapers, all of the big TV channels, ITV, The Sun. Like, I was actually someone who would have been considered very moderate. So my argument to everyone, it's like, it's not me who's changed, right? I am exactly the same as I was when I was working in the mainstream media. What has changed is that this woke mind virus, as Elon Musk calls it, and I think he's right to call it that, has just infiltrated the institutions, the media organizations. And so we're being told, that it's completely normal to say that, a man should be able to compete in a female swimming race. Do you see what I
yeah,
mean?
yeah.
I feel like what people like me and Paul Joseph Watson are doing is very much where the majority of the British population is at. It's actually the mainstream media that has become really like out of touch.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's like, don't believe your lying eyes. Just don't believe what we're telling you, and just don't believe your own
And just
intuition or something.
shut up. They just want
Yeah,
us to shut up. Do you know what I mean? Don't 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 even say what you see
yeah.
anymore. I mean, honestly, look. I hope this makes your American viewers feel better because it's bad here. You can't leave your house. So I live in London, and I've lived in London for 20 years, and I'm literally watching the destruction of London in the same way that probably people in San Francisco, have watched the destruction of San Francisco because of very liberal policies for the past 3 decades. The same thing is happening here in London. We have a Muslim mayor, Sadiq Khan, and he's on the hard left, and it's happening here. And I promise you, I cannot leave my house now and walk down the street holding my phone because it will be stolen. Like there are gangs that just like trawl around the street, and this has happened to me multiple times. Like this is not an exaggeration. There are gangs that just literally trawl the streets at all time, and they're gangs of like hooded youth who will come up to you like it's just too quick. It's over before you know it. Like, and they'll be on either motorbikes or very very fast like push bikes, and they'll just take the phone from your hands. But I've also had friends who've had their Rolex watches or whatever stolen. So we no longer live in like a safe society here. So there are a huge amount of problems, and obviously you have to look at what the cause of those problems are. And a lot of the cause of those problems are mass uncontrolled immigration from societies that have very different values to our Christian culture. And if you don't discuss that, then you're never going to actually solve the problem.
Yeah, it's like, who's voting I mean, like, who's voting for these people, or
Yeah,
who
well, no
who
one. No one. I mean, that's the biggest.
yeah.
That is actually the biggest issue. that for the past 60 years, the British people have been out on at every turn. Like, you can look at any poll historically, at every turn we have always voted for governments that have promised to control mass immigration, and they never have. So of course you have to ask why, and it's a lot of the fact that, and this is not a conspiracy theory. I mean, I'm not really someone who uses that word anymore, that term anymore anyway, because I always think like all of the people who were calling things that I was saying over COVID, for example, a conspiracy theory, they're all true now, and they're just accepted facts. So
Nice.
I don't like that term, but the point is, the UK is run by a lot of like globalist organizations who want no borders, who want mass uncontrolled immigration. And the British people have been let down time and again by because we have a two-party system like you do, there are two parties, but that system is about to be smashed because we're sick of it. We're just sick of it. We are sick of voting for something, being told, yep, immigration's going to come down. We're not going to do this anymore. We're not going to let all of these criminals into our country. Normal British people can't get, hospital appointments or can't get houses. But yet still, I mean, we're letting in like 1 million people a year. It's nuts. So we're going through like a big political revolution here, and I do think the whole two-party system will be smashed, and that's a huge thing. But it has happened in other European countries. But just imagine a world like, say, in America, where the Republican Party and the Democratic Party are just wiped out. But it needs to happen here because we call it the uni party, and it's the two big parties, the Labour Party and the Conservative Party, and they've just let us down for decade after decade. They've always promised change and then actually have always delivered the same thing.
That sounds so much like America. They and for decades, they're like, the war on drugs and the war on homelessness and the border and whatever. And like, nothing ever really gets fixed. Right. They just keep promising it, and people keep falling for it. I'm just dumbfounded. That's why I've kind of, like I said, I haven't voted in quite a few years. But even like the wars, like I went to the Iraq war, and I feel like lied to about the cause, because I went to Iraq, and they didn't even necessarily do anything. It was in that region of the world, I guess, where they were sent from, but like not particularly Iraq. And I just,
so
the media,
feel you put your life on the line for effectively a lie?
Yeah, 100%. And that
is so shocking.
It's shocking. Yeah, it just makes you question everything, and which we should be doing, because.
But Afghanistan, do you accept that like the war in Afghanistan was, I mean,
that seemed more legitimate.
Necessary?
Yeah.
Because that's the only thing because look, I'm pretty much like, it's interesting. I've gone on a journey with all of this too, like a whole load of us have. Like, potentially, I previously would have been considered someone who was more hawkish, and I certainly definitely believe in like the need for a lot of defense spending and a big military and all of that to protect ourselves, to protect ourselves from threats. But the constant drive to war is something that I am now deeply opposed to. I'm very much was very much opposed from quite early on to the Russia-Ukraine war, for example. And I know that's a much more common policy in America, but like not here in Europe. Like, pretty much in Europe, virtually every major party, even now, still supports this ongoing war in Ukraine. But the thing that I find really interesting is that when you're talking to America First people, it's like, okay, but just remember, because, I lived through 9/11. Yeah. I remember the mood after 9/11. Like, that was the most popular war ever.
Yeah.
Like, the idea that 9/11 could happen and Bush wasn't going to invade Afghanistan, like, I just think that would never have happened. So Iraq, totally, like an illegal war, and I think it's disgusting. We have this guy, Alistair Campbell, over here. I don't know if you've ever heard of him, but he was like Tony Blair's main advisor, and he was the guy that wrote or was responsible for the sexed up dossier that Colin Powell delivered, do you remember, at the UN? And it was the thing that was trying to convince the world that actually Iraq was much closer to the nuclear weapons than they were. All of that was so wrong. And this guy still like is a big player in the British media today, always on the mainstream media. I'm like, you should be in jail. Do you know what I mean? You are a war criminal. I mean, we can't stand each other. We're constantly going at each other on Twitter because I'm like, you literally lied. Like, why are we listening to what you think about Ukraine or Israel or whatever? Because it's like, you are literally a war criminal. You lied about to send Britain into the war in Iraq. So but I guess where I sort of draw the line is Afghanistan, because I think, well, you know, the Taliban were harboring the terrorists that caused 9/11, if you believe that narrative. So isn't it, look,
Well, and
it's
then
just an
Saudi
interesting
Arabia,
debate, isn't
it's
it?
like
Yeah.
it's like, but we're friends with Saudi Arabia, and
Yes.
so, and like I heard all these planes, and I just regurgitate a lot of the stuff that I hear on the internet or whatever. But I'd also, if it has been verified or resonates with my conscious or intuition, but like, we're not going to attack them.
No.
But and I'm not saying that we should, but there's something just larger going on, like these like global elite pulling the strings.
Yes.
And
Yes, and they want forever wars. You know, look, the
yeah,
reality is it's like Big Pharma, isn't it? It's like there is a
yes,
huge amount of money in forever wars. There's a
yeah,
huge amount of money for all of these people who are constantly arming Israel, etc., etc. So I believe in having the debate and having the discussion. That is the critical thing. And that is, I think, the really exciting thing that has happened from the independent media revolution, you know? So like there was that big debate on Joe Rogan's show between Douglas Murray and Dave Smith, and it's like, actually, that's just fascinating. You know, I really like Douglas Murray. I know him, and we go back a little bit, but I loved that because I didn't, you know, I could see both sides of that argument. I found it absolutely fascinating, and I think that was a debate that would just never be had in the mainstream media because it was just like, just these things were just accepted facts.
yeah.
And
I
nothing
love.
should just be an accepted fact, you know?
No, no, absolutely. And let's not have a 5-minute clip where you're arguing or yelling over each other and then it goes to commercial, having that long
Yes.
form
Yes.
conversation. And I love
Yeah,
Douglas Murray as well. He's so intelligent
he
and
is.
has a lot of great points. But I also love Dave Smith, who I'm coincidentally on 2 nights I'm going up to Denver to see him do a comedy show, which he is just a comedian,
You're
but he's
just
also
a
very
comedian.
smart.
Just a
He
comedian, not an expert. But, you know, again, see, that's where I was on Dave Smith's side and all of this, because I'm like, I'm sorry, we were so let down by the experts over COVID. You know,
Yeah,
like I
and
was
he
one
was
of
on
the
point.
Yeah,
Yeah,
like I was one of the only people in the British mainstream media, genuinely, like I've got all the receipts to back this up, who was
nice.
fighting against crazy shit during lockdown, right? Like
Yeah,
right from the very start, even though I was operating within the mainstream media. And I'm like, all of those people who sat back and said, oh no, let's rely on the experts. It's like they did not know what the hell they were doing. All of the economic carnage that we're dealing with now in the United Kingdom is because of those lockdown policies. So I just don't buy into the argument of you've got to be an expert on a particular area, because what is an expert? Like, I don't respect someone just because they've been to university. Hell no, because if you've been to university in the United Kingdom, right, it's that whole Oxbridge thing. Like you've been to Oxford or Cambridge and you are part of the elite. But no, that means you think in a certain way. And that's not to say there's not some great people who've come out of Oxbridge. Of course there are, you know, there's some wonderful people, but I'm not just going to respect you simply because you do have that type of education or you happen to have worked in government or whatever. So I think that's where the independent media is like great, because the guests who I have on my show, they're not always experts. Like some of them are, some of them aren't. And I judge guests by what they have to offer, what their view is, how honest they're prepared to be, not what their qualifications are, you know, or what their former jobs were.
totally. And you can have two experts on opposing sides, and then what do you do? You know, so I it's fascinating to talk to you. I want to respect your time. I feel like we could go on forever
Yeah, we could.
because
We could go on all night, couldn't
I'm
we?
having a great time. But I just want to say thank you for taking the time to come on here. I
Thank you
hope
so much. I loved
that
it.
the audience appreciates this one. I think this is going to be one of my better podcasts, and we were, like I said, honored to be a sponsor of your show.
I was
And
going to say thank you so much, and obviously I'd love people to check out Outspoken, and Outspoken very often is presented by Sheath, which is very, very exciting, and we so value the support. And I think what's really brilliant is that, because as I say, America, you guys are used to this whole independent media thing. You've been doing it for more years. We're much newer here. And so being able to get something like this going with the support of companies like Sheath has just been an amazing thing. So thank you so much.
And thank you, because I'm on board with your messaging, especially now after talking to you over this past hour. And so I'm going to let you go. Thank you so much. Everyone, check out Outspoken, subscribe to his channel. It's good stuff. And share this podcast with your friends, because I think getting like a little bit more of an inside look into Dan himself is enlightening. And so I appreciate you again for the third time. Yes. Okay. Bye, everyone.
Thank you, Robert.